I never thought my parents would spend $700K on my brother's wedding while giving me just 100. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The day my heart shattered into a million pieces, each reflecting betrayal. I stood there, breathless, trying to make sense of it all. The lavish invitations, glittering decorations, and my brother's glow, they felt like knives in my chest. It was an unusual scene. My family had always prided itself on being modest. But then, somehow, everything changed. A secret lottery win? An unexpected inheritance? I could practically hear gasps echoing in my head as whispers floated through the air like smoke. Everyone knew about the wedding now. The extravagant cake towering 3 feet tall, the flower arrangements worth more than my entire wardrobe. And me? I was a ghost in my own home. Mom smiled at him, her eyes sparkling with pride, while I could barely keep my own tears from flowing. I clenched the crumpled bill in my hand, me pathetic 100. A reminder of my place in this twisted fairy tale. Memories of sharing birthday cakes, giving sisterly advice, and laughing until our sides hurt flickered like a dying candle. What had happened to us? The tension crackled like static electricity. My friends were shocked. Why so much for him? They whispered, and I nodded, but I was just as baffled. I longed for answers. The churning questions in my gut twisted tighter. What about me? Was I not worthy of some of that love? My heart thumped like a drum, loud against the silence that filled the room. Then came the moment I never expected. In the midst of cake tastings and floral arrangements, Johnny, my brother, proposed a toast. To family. He cheered. Laughter erupted, but I felt hollow. To family? My pulse raced as if the world had shifted upside down. Why wasn't I included? Why weren't we raising a glass to us all? I caught my mother's gaze. The flicker of doubt crossed her face, but she quickly masked it. I wanted to shout, to demand an explanation, to shake her into reality. Instead, I stood frozen, trembling. The walls seemed to close in, as if the house itself was suffocating me. With a deep breath, I turned to leave, the sound of cheer fading behind me. And there it was, in the corner of my mind, the shadow of a thought I couldn't shake. Was there something more at play here? Some dark family secret I was unaware of? The very foundation of my identity felt shaky. Could it be that this wedding wasn't just about love, but something far more sinister? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days blurred into one another, each passing moment a reminder of the rift now buried deep within our family. Silence filled the air whenever I walked into a room, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words and hidden sentiments. I drifted through my own life, a mere specter overshadowed by the shiny, exuberant spectacle that loomed over my brother's wedding. I grasped the crumpled 100 like a talisman, yet it only served to deepen the wound. It felt like I was living in a parallel world, where nothing made sense. My friends offered sympathetic glances when they caught the tension etched on my face, but each moment we shared only amplified my isolation. I could hardly muster the energy to pretend that everything was fine. You should just tell them how you feel, one of my closest friends, Lisa, urged me over coffee. You're their daughter too. You deserve better, but how could I? The fear of breaking an already frayed bond paralyzed me. Instead, I invested my focus into the small pleasures of my life, volunteering at the shelter, painting, and the comforting embrace of long, quiet walks through the park. Those fleeting moments were a balm for my aching heart, a reminder that kindness existed outside my family's walls. One particularly warm Saturday, I found myself at the park painting the lush scenery, seeking solace and an escape from reality. Mid-stroke of my brush, I was jolted from my thoughts by a timid voice approaching from behind. "Excuse me, is this your painting?" A young girl, perhaps no older than 10, stood transfixed by the canvas. Her wide eyes sparkled with hope, as if she were peering into a magical realm. "Yes." I smiled, heart warmed by her enthusiasm. "What do you think? It's beautiful," she whispered, her face lighting up like the morning sun. "My name's Sophia. As we talked, Sophia's innocent perspective was a breath of fresh air. I found myself laughing at her wild tales and imaginative dreams, sharing snippets of my own life with someone who listened without judgment. In that moment, I felt a glimmer of hope, perhaps a reminder that there was beauty in the world even amidst my turmoil, but the joy was short-lived. A sudden thought crept back in, heavy and convoluted. What if my parents had chosen to shower Johnny with love to compensate for something they had done wrong? The whispers of intuition clawed at my mind, casting shadows over the small moments of joy I tried to hold on to. Could it be that they regretted choices made long before my brother's wedding saga unfolded? Desperate for clarity, I approached my mother later that week. The air was thick as I sat across from her at the dining table, the remnants of last night's dinner still clinging to the plates between us. "Mom, do you ever feel different?" I ventured hesitantly, grounding my trembling hands on the table. She paused, her fork motionless. "Different how? Like something is hidden," I stammered, pouring my heart out against the barriers that kept us apart. "Like there's something I'm not seeing. I feel so out of place these days." Her eyes darkened, a shadow sweeping across her face. For a fleeting moment, I thought I caught a glimpse of the truth swirling within her, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "You're imagining things, darling. Just focus on your art and things will be better." The dismissal stood a sharp, chilling blow that sent my heart racing. I tried to catch her gaze as I stood, but her eyes were averted, keeping the secret safely tucked away. Leave it to me to derail the very thing I had sought: a connection. Feeling utterly defeated, I retreated to the sanctuary of my bedroom. As I sank onto the floor, tears streamed down my cheeks, and I began to jot down my feelings in a journal. Every stroke of the pen unearthed fragments of anger, confusion, and longing. I knew I'd have to confront the family truths one day, but not yet. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the faint sound of laughter and music floated through the air from the gathering celebrating yet another wedding-related event. My brother's engagement party. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. It was all happening without me, a deep, impenetrable fortress built around my own family, while I was left standing outside. But then came a sudden knock on my door. My father entered, his face uncharacteristically somber. "Can we talk?" he asked, a crack in his bravado. There was a flash of hope that flickered but quickly sputtered in the shadows of doubt. What could he possibly say that would enlighten the darkness settling in my heart? As he stepped closer, I caught a glimpse of something raw vulnerability that struck me as incongruent with the staunch figure I'd come to know. "Sure," I swallowed hard, heart racing, uncertainty heavy in the air. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, the silence was shattered by the distant sound of glass breaking, followed by muffled shouts from downstairs. My pulse quickened as adrenaline surged through me. I leaped to my feet. "Dad? What was that?" But even before he could respond, a horrible thought gripped me. My brother was downstairs. Was something about to go terribly wrong? The night stretched before me, now alive with unexpected tension and the promise of hidden truths fighting to unearth themselves. The chaos erupted beneath us, a cacophony of confusion and dread that poured through the walls of my bedroom, reverberating against my shaking heart. I felt the cool breath of worry wash over me, tightening around my chest. My father's eyes held a blend of fear and hesitation, lingering long enough for me to realize he was a man no longer capable of maintaining the facade of control. "Stay here," he said, but I could hear the tremor in his voice betraying a sense of urgency that called out to me. I took a step toward the door, a surge of determination drowning out my father's pleas. "No. I need to know what's happening. As if in a trance, the two of us hurried down the stairs, propelled by fear yet tethered to a shared sense of family duty. The muffled shouts grew more frantic, punctuated by the sound of footsteps racing towards the kitchen. My heart felt leaden as I reached the last step and finally entered the tumultuous scene. There in the kitchen, chaos had unleashed itself like a savage beast. My brother, Johnny, stood with a pained expression, his face pale as if he'd seen a ghost. A group of guests hovered anxiously, their voices overlapping each other, each wave crashing against my crumbling composure. My mother was at the center of it all, waving her arms, her face etched with panic as she addressed the steady stream of whispers. What happened? I managed, forcing through the storm of worries that had entwined my breath. A distant voice broke through, an unfamiliar woman who looked as fraught as my mother. She's cut herself. She who? My father demanded, rage and anguish in his tone. Who's hurt? The tension felt electric, a live wire that danced in the air. I exchanged a glance with my father, and a flurry of emotions bloomed in silence between us. Fear, love, guilt, an indelible bond that we shared even within this storm. And then, as if the universe was playing a cruel trick, someone shifted aside, revealing the small form of a girl lying on the floor, her legs trembling slightly. Sophia. The girl I had met just days ago in the park, her face now ghostly white, streaked with tears and smeared with blood from a deep gash on her forearm. My heart lurched in disbelief. How could fate weave this cruel tapestry in a single moment, so soon after I'd found joy in her innocent laughter? My brother's face twisted in horror as he rushed toward her, cradling her trembling form in his arms. Sophia! Oh my God! What happened? It was an accident. I just wanted to see the cake. She whimpered, struggling to keep her composure as she clutched the edge of the counter. The words were stitched together with pain, yet the echo of her previous hope rang in my ears. It was a relatable innocence, marred only by today's chaos, that I slipped through the throng of concerned guests, kneeling beside my brother as he cradled Sophia's small frame. Johnny, we need to get her help. I urged, the memory of vibrant brush strokes and warm sunshine fading into urgency. Johnny's face was a mask of despair, a whirlwind of emotions that mirrored my own. Call an ambulance. He barked at the nearest adult, while his hands remained steady around Sophia, grounding her as if he alone could keep her from slipping into darkness. Just as the panic reached its crescendo, an evening of promises, laughter, and celebrations turned into an ordeal fraught with raw emotion and urgency. As the sirens wailed in the distance, a heavy question hovered in the air, unspoken yet palpable. How had we allowed our family bond to fray so dangerously that a small child could find herself so lost amongst us? And then, amidst the chaos, the realization hit me, a painful insight buried beneath the layers of my own anguish. Was it possible that the 100 from my parents was merely a reflection of their own external struggles? Had years of prioritizing wealth over family fractured the very foundation I sought to mend? Tears surged as Sophia's gaze met mine. Those innocent eyes twinkled with trust but flickered with fear. An understanding passed silently between us, one that resonated deeply within my troubled heart. Just as I had once reached for acceptance from my parents, she was now reaching for solace in the middle of a tempest. But the moment broke when the paramedics arrived in a rush of authority, swiftly ushering us aside. The sight of my brother's anguished expression, entwined with guilt and helplessness, propelled me into a spiral of conflicting emotions. What now? Would we remain haunted by our ambivalence, held captive by unaddressed fears crawling like shadows beneath the surface? With my brother shoulder deep in crisis, I knew I could no longer wait for a moment to confront the buried truths within my family. I had always felt apart, an outsider peering in, and I realized the urgency to reconcile before more fragile hearts fell prey to the raging storms we had inadvertently created. As I stepped back from the scene, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Lisa. Glancing away from my brother, I hastily pulled it out, reading her message. We need to talk. There's so much I haven't told you. The universe seemed to shift, a subtle but striking signal that maybe, just maybe, this was an opportunity to dismantle the walls keeping me apart from my family. An invitation to dive deeper into the chaos and light the way through the fog of secrets, just as I had done for little Sophia. but as I scrolled, my breath caught in my throat. There, at the bottom of the screen, was something shocking, a photograph. It was Johnny, but not as my brother. He stood with people I barely recognized, their smiles too bright and familiar, a family portrait, except it wasn't of us, and my heart sank as I grasped the truth I had sought to avoid. There were pieces of my family that remained hidden, cradled in someone else's hands. I hovered over the image, an entanglement of confusion, heartbreak, and a yearning for clarity that brushed against the edges of despair. What had my family become, and how many more unfinished truths lurked in the shadows, awaiting their moment to rise? When the sirens faded into the background, swallowed by the rising hum of anxious voices, the kitchen transformed from a tempest of motion into a still life of uncertainty. I remained glued to the spot, edging closer but still distant enough to avoid the fray. My father, fading into the background like a weary shadow, stepped outside to talk to the paramedics, the weight of my own failures pressing down on me like a heavy shroud. My brother's unwavering grip on Sophia drew my attention back to the trembling girl, who was now surrounded by adults desperately trying to contain the chaos. I saw the fear in her eyes and the flash of trust she offered to Johnny. It struck me how his nurturing instinct emerged even amid his own panic. A flicker of hope glimmered within the storm. I realized that small acts of kindness could ignite resilience, often when least expected. "Someone hold her hand," I called out, breaking free from my frozen state. "She needs to feel safe." My voice came out louder than I intended, but the moment felt too critical to be overshadowed by my own self-doubt. Johnny looked up, a grateful light sparking amid his despair, and he leaned closer to Sophia, offering her his hand. She clutched it tightly. It was such an ordinary gesture, yet so profoundly human. We often overlook those simple connections that tether us to one another. And in that instant, I understood their bond was fragile yet fierce, like a wilted flower still reaching for the sun. As the paramedics worked efficiently with practiced ease, I noticed my father standing at the door, a low frown etched on his face. In that moment, he transformed from the patriarch comforting, staunch to a man merely standing guard against a reality that was slowly unraveling. The gulf that had grown between us all those years felt insurmountable, and while I felt an urgent need to cross it, the fear of what lay ahead paralyzed me. "Why don't we?" I began to suggest, but the words caught in my throat. What could I even ask my family to do in this moment? Rely on a unity that had become a distant memory? With each breath, I sensed the weight of the photograph in my pocket, the haunting symbol of the truths I needed to confront but couldn't fathom doing so in a kitchen heavy with the scent of fear. Instead, the distraction of noise pulled my attention back to the room, where my childhood friends gathered awkwardly, their faces marked by concern but unable to breach the chaos. Sarah, who had once been my closest ally through the trials of adolescence, stepped closer to me. "Is everything okay?" she whispered, her voice softer than the whirling commotion around us. "Do you think everything is okay?" I shot back, an edge to my tone. The anxious rhythm of her heartbeat resonated with mine. We were both caught somewhere between worry and a desperate need to fix things that had long ago spun out of control. "Right. Sorry." She paused, her fingertips brushing my arm. "Is there anything I can do?" "No," I murmured, as I remembered just how powerless I felt. Just be here." Her presence anchored me for a brief moment as the paramedics carried Sophia on a gurney, her small frame wrapped in sterile white cloth that felt so stark against her golden curls. Johnny walked alongside, his anguish palpable, drawing me further into the whirlpool of his pain. In that moment, I wished I could speak the truth that scratches at the edges of my soul, but the vulnerabilities of those around me held me back. My courage felt thin, suffocated by the history weaved between my family and their decisions and the roles we had all chosen to play. Then, as I caught a glimpse of Johnny's face, a flicker of memory battled through the turmoil. It was the day he found my mother in the living room, sitting surrounded by unopened wedding gifts, her tears falling on the delicate fabric of the untouched wrapping paper. I imagined the conversations they never had, the dreams they buried beneath the weight of expectations. Will they fight about me? I thought suddenly, the unvoiced fear looming large. Perhaps they had always been fighting for something neither of them could name, and here I was a bystander in their never-ending duel, like Sophia caught in an accident that had toyed with fate. Suddenly, my phone vibrated again, a stark reminder of the unresolved paths lying before me. "We need to meet. It's urgent." Lisa's words leaped off the screen, a lifeline that threatened to expose even deeper chasms in my understanding of our lives. My breath quickened. Should I tell Johnny about the photograph? How his life intersected with a mystery I desperately wanted to unravel. Fear tightened around my throat, echoing my earlier sentiment. What if the walls I hoped to dismantle were fortified by secrets far darker? In that swirl of hope and dread, the paramedics wheeled Sophia out, the room shimmering in uncertainty. Would her fragile form be the catalyst that finally compelled us to confront our truths, or would she vanish into the storm, just another casualty of a family unanchored? And just as I felt the stirrings of confidence, Johnny turned back to me, his eyes glistening with something akin to desperation. What if she doesn't make it? What if Shay reached for him, a gesture of clarity in a sea of chaos, but the words died in my throat? Could we risk even more? The answer hung heavily between us, threading the air with one unmistakable truth: we had to face these secrets together, or be forever haunted by their ghostly presence. "Johnny," I started, the photograph lingering in my mind, waiting for its moment to break through. "There's something I haven't told you, something about us." But in that crucial instant, the front door burst open, and a frantic woman stormed in, her face flushed, eyes wild with an urgency that ripped through the tenuous thread of calm we'd managed to weave. "Where is she? Where's Sophia?" she yelled, an unmistakable cry of a desperate mother. And just like that, the very air thickened with tension once more, leaving my words unspoken, like a lingering storm threatening to shatter everything we tried to hold. And perhaps in that moment, we would finally begin to unravel the dense fabric of lies that kept us trapped, or at the very least, we would learn just how fragile our own glimmer of hope truly was. The chaos in the kitchen resumed, a cacophony of cries and desperate voices as the woman, Sophia's mother, clashed with the paramedics' stony professionalism. It was a brutal reminder of the reality that enveloped us all, as unnecessary details ricocheted through my mind: the money spent on lavish wedding arrangements, the decisions made that seemed so trivial compared to the looming specter of a child's life hanging in the balance. Each sharp cry from the mother brought a new twist to the narrative of our family, a reminder that while some were focused on appearances, others were consumed by heartache. It struck me like a dagger. I would never know what her world felt like, the weight of loss so immediate and visceral. "Mom, you have to let them do their job." Johnny's voice broke as he stepped between his girlfriend's sobbing mother and the paramedics. I watched him transform, his facade of a boy replaced by a young man forced to shoulder burdens that far exceeded his age. I stepped forward, a quiet rage building inside me, breathing heavy with memories of my own disconnected needs. The dichotomy of feelings stirred a deep empathy churning with a simmering frustration for my own ignored cries for connection. Why had joy been hoarded for one occasion, while grief on this ordinary day felt limitless? It was a contradiction that gnawed at my gut, perhaps echoing our unspoken family dynamics. Maybe if they had a budget for memories, instead of a budget for some dress, I thought bitterly, but swallowed the words. Didn't I want to be better than this? I wanted to reach out, to find a bridge to Johnny and his pain, but every time I opened my mouth, it was as if my thoughts slipped through my fingers, curling just out of reach. The kitchen felt like a pressure cooker, the emotions boiling over as more voices pressed in around us. With each frantic heartbeat, my father's expression veered between sorrow for Sophia and guilt etched from years of family discord. The tension was palpable, thickening as we all struggled to maneuver the circumstances laid out before us. My phone buzzed again, but I disregarded it, my focus shifting to Johnny as he threw a glance back at me, an unasked question lurking just below the surface. He needed comfort, we all did. But how could I give him that when I was still bound by my own chains of silence? And then, just as the air turned electric with despair, the paramedics began wheeling Sophia's mother away, leaving her small frame behind. My heart clenched tightly as I caught a glimpse of Johnny, his knuckles widening around the edge of the countertop. What was it that truly mattered? Would this moment come to signify a turning point, where family priorities, once anchored in materialism, underwent a profound transformation? Or would we remain on this precipice, teetering between connection and disconnection, all held hostage by unspoken words? "Johnny," I said as I finally found the courage to step closer, letting my thoughts spill out before my heart could retreat again. "I know this is hard, but we can't let fear control us anymore." He turned to face me fully, his eyes wide and vulnerable. "How do you mean? We have to talk about the bigger picture," I urged. "It's not just about Sophia, it's how we've been living. Remember that afternoon when we went hiking? Everything felt free. We can't keep burying our truths." I searched for the right words, desperate to break through the walls that had segregated our emotions. Johnny nodded slowly, his gaze steadying against the tsunami of chaos surrounding us. "You mean the photograph?" he asked, hesitantly. "The photograph." Suddenly, the weight of my secret felt unbearable, yet liberating. It was a strand woven into the tapestry of our lives, the forgotten connection, the reality behind our shared past. I didn't understand why it felt so fraught yet necessary to share, but the raw honesty shimmering in his eyes demanded honesty from me. But before I could respond, a loud crash came from the living room, pulling our attention outward. I rushed toward the sound, curious dread edging inside me. My heart raced, matching the pace of the urgent thuds against my ribcage. What else could transpire on this day, one where a child's life hung in the balance and countless critical conversations lay just beyond our grasp? Running around the corner, I was met not with the mundane setting of our quiet home, but with a chaotic scene. My father was standing there, lifelessly gazing at the television screen. The news anchor was speaking urgently, words barely intelligible over the discord of footsteps, the muted anticipation from the kitchen lingering in the air. Local child injured in a tragic incident on the highway. Authorities are still investigating. My heart fell into an abyss at the sight of my father's shock, and I felt a tide of confusion engulfing the room. I found myself frozen, uncertain about how to process the reality spilling in. "Sophia? Was it possible, Dad?" I called, hesitating as the air quaked with something far more significant. In that moment, time halted, and the fissures began to form, widening our collective chasms. Just as I stepped closer to grasp the gravity of the situation, the door swung open once more. A figure stepped inside, adrenaline coursing through me as I realized who it was. Lisa. She looked disheveled yet determined, eyes scanning for someone, anyone. "Have you heard?" she breathlessly asked, clenching her fists as a wave of desperation washed over her. "They're saying it could be linked to your family. Sophia's accident. There's breaking news about a conflict in Crossmill. We have to talk." And just like that, the threads tying our lives unraveled at an alarming rate, revealing inescapable truths that sought to rewrite everything we held dear. I stood there, my heart racing in perfect sync with the intensity swirling around us. The reality of Lisa's words weighed heavily on my chest, intertwining with the tension already brewing in the room. "Linked to your family? What could that possibly mean?" Every instinct told me to recoil, to retreat back into the safety of my silence, but something deeper compelled me to engage. "Linked how?" I managed to ask, though my voice barely broke through the confusion. My father, still transfixed by the television, seemed to come alive in a new way. I could see the armor of distance slipping just slightly as fear sparked in his eyes. "They're saying it's about the construction. Something went wrong with their equipment. Could be a defect. They're focusing on that company, the one your dad has been dealing with." Lisa's breath came fast, her worry palpable as she locked her gaze on mine. "They think the business deals could be tied to negligence. It's spilling out everywhere. What does that mean for us?" It was a question spiraling out into the chaotic atmosphere, suffocating me before it could find form. Memories of my father's stern, businesslike demeanor flashed in my mind, and a knot tightened in my gut. I could see Sophia's eager spirit from the wedding planning, the laughter shared over those absurd arrangements, now tainted with the dread of a looming scandal. "Dad," I began, but he turned toward me, his expression more naked than I had ever seen. The walls that kept a pristine facade were crumbling, and in their place was an agonizing vulnerability. "Not now, not here," he rasped, but his eyes flicked to the television screen. As if summoned, the details emerged with the next breaking segment. It spoke of families hurt and investigations underway, but beyond the sterile phrases was an unmistakable hue of tragedy. My mind raced back to Sophia's vibrant laughter. Does Johnny know? Lisa whispered, her eyebrows furrowing with concern. A surge of confusion enveloped me. What did it matter now? This was about more than just Johnny. This was about truth, about a ripple effect that could threaten to swallow all of us whole. Before I could respond, Johnny appeared beside me, his steps cautious but resolute. He grabbed my arm, anchoring me as a familiar warmth seeped through his fingertips. What happened? He asked, sincerity woven into every syllable as his eyes darted between mine and Lisa's. That I opened my mouth again, desperate to fill the void of knowledge, but words escaped me, a familiar silence embedding itself between our collective fears. Johnny, Lisa finally said, her voice returning to normal, they think it's linked to your family. The accident, Sophia being there, it could be serious. He paled at the thought, the spark of hope faltering as his mind raced to comprehend the calamity. I could almost see the moments flickering through his eyes, the memories of our hikes and laughter overshadowed by the weight of impending grief. Even as he took strides toward the television, it became clear that these revelations were more than just news, they were the blaring sirens of impending doom. Are we really talking about a scandal here? Our family's name on the line? Johnny asked, his voice rising with panic. Reality hung heavy, the gravity of our families weaving through a tightly wound fabric of decisions that now threatened to unravel. I reached for Johnny's hand, squeezing as we faced our own spirals of disbelief. Not just your family, I whispered, the realization dawning on me about the interdependencies we held. It's all of us. And what about Sophia? Lisa's expression shifted from fierce resolve to dampened uncertainty. We can't just stand here, she urged, her voice rising above the shouts from the television. We need to figure out our story before it's sewn together in ways we can't control. The wedding? The deal with the construction? They could see this as a pattern. We have to protect ourselves, the word struck home, igniting a slow burn of determination in my chest. There was something else unspoken fluttering in the air, hanging like the dust motes caught in a beam of sunlight that pierced the dim kitchen. We had sealed ourselves off from pain, desperate for normalcy, but now the potential for healing lay beyond the shadows. We'll face this together, I promised Johnny, drawing strength from his presence. But even as I spoke these words, a flicker of doubt gnawed at my resolve. Was I prepared to confront the deeper truths lurking in the undercurrents we brushed aside for so long? Suddenly, an incoming call chimed on my phone, startling me out of the charged moment. Fumbling, my heart dropped when I recognized the name on the screen. It was Sandra, our family's lawyer. She never called unless there was something vitally pressing. Not now, I muttered, torn between the immediate chaos surrounding me and the impending weight of what Sandra would say. My hand hesitated over the screen, panic almost leaving me breathless, but Johnny took a deep breath and nodded at me, a flicker of assurance in his expressive blue eyes. You have to answer. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. I nodded reluctantly, pressing the green button. As I prepared to face whatever news awaited me, I could already sense the shifting tide. Unbeknownst to me, the words about to wash over us would spiral beyond our plans and dreams, illuminating paths we thought we had long buried, deepening our emotional conflict in ways I could scarcely imagine. The moment I answered the call, Sandra's voice spilled through the receiver, clear yet strained. You need to sit down, she advised, and I felt the weight of dread settle in my stomach. Is it about the construction company? I asked, my heart pounding as I stole a glance at Johnny, whose worried expression mirrored my own. Yes, but it's more complicated than that, she continued. We have received documents indicating that several families have already begun filing lawsuits. There are claims of negligence, and your family's name has been mentioned prominently. With each word, I could feel the ground shift beneath me, and I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. What does this mean for us? I whispered. It means you need to get ahead of this. The media is already swirling with speculation about your family and the tragedy last week, she said, her voice steadying as if trying to infuse me with strength. We can't just wait for it to blow up. You need to be ready to speak. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. I wanted to scream, to run away from all of this. How could I possibly address the world when my heart was still wrapped up in despair for Sophia, whose laughter felt impossibly far away? Yes. I know it's a lot to take in, but you need to prepare a statement. We'll guide you through it, but understand that your family's reputation is on the line. Her tone darkened, a grim echo of the reality awaiting us. As I hung up the phone, I could feel the silence creeping back into our space, pressing down like an unwelcome weight. Johnny's eyes widened in disbelief, and Lisa was shaking her head, trying to process everything we had just learned. Is it really that bad? Johnny asked, his voice barely masking the tremor underneath. As he searched my face for reassurance, I felt a swell of emotions rise and swell. The betrayal of the truth I had concealed from him crashed over me like a tide. The truth about our family's downward spiral and my raw fears about standing alone. I don't know, I replied finally, my voice small. But we need to find a way to make it right. The thought of facing the cameras and microphones terrified me, yet I could see a desperate glimmer in Johnny's eyes, a spark of resilience that I longed to mirror. Lisa stepped forward, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. We're going to get through this together, she said, her certainty infusing some of my own, even as doubt lingered. But it will require all of us to step up, to be honest. We owe that to Sophia. Her words struck like a bell tolling in the distance, reminders of what lay ahead, the ghosts we needed to confront. Together, we could not just weather this storm but also unearth the hidden intricacies of our lives that had bred complacency, and yet, just as we began constructing fragile plans, the world outside exploded with sound. Shouting voices came from the street below, punctuated by the flashing lights of news vans that swarmed like bees drawn to honey. A knot twisted in my gut, and the reality that our lives were no longer ours to protect hit hard. Let's get out of here, I murmured, glancing over at the ominous glow radiating through the window. But even as I turned, something inside me braced against the tide of escalating chaos, terrified of what waited outside these walls: the judgments, the expectations, the relentless scrutiny. Then came a knock at the door, sharp and insistent. The foreboding thud filled the silence, an unexpected interruption that shattered any tentative resolve I felt in that moment. We exchanged glances, and what had been a wave of determination started wavering beneath the uncertainty. Who is it? Johnny called, frustration rising through his shaky voice. No answer came, just the rusty creak of the handle as it rattled slightly, a reminder that no matter how tightly we tried to seal off our world, the outside chaos seeped into our lives. I glanced between Johnny and Lisa, a silent consensus forming as I approached the door. The weight of possibility hung in the air. What if it was someone with news of Sophia? What if something dreadful awaited? Just beyond that threshold, taking a deep breath, I turned the handle slowly, the anticipation thrumming like a heartbeat, and pushed the door open. Standing there, framed by the harsh glow outside, was a figure I had never expected. An unexpected visitor whose presence could reshape everything. All the plans and hopes that we had just begun to forge shattered at the sight of them, turning this precarious moment into a cliffhanger that edged us further into uncertainty. As the door creaked open, the light from the street illuminated a face I recognized but had long since hoped to forget: Clara, my estranged aunt. Her once vibrant features were now lined with worry, a stark contrast to the animated woman I remembered from childhood. Seeing her there, standing in the shadows of a universe bursting with chaos and doubt, sent a wave of uncertainty crashing over me. Clara? I whispered, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. The moment hung between us, heavy with years of silence and broken ties. Can I come in? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, tinged with tension. I hesitated, glancing back at Johnny and Lisa, whose expressions mirrored my inner turmoil, an overwhelming cocktail of surprise and suspicion. Why are you here? I finally managed, struggling to keep my voice steady as a fresh wave of fear washed over me. What could she want in this moment of distress? Was it care or confrontation? I know you're going through hell right now, she said, her gaze fixed on me with a mix of urgency and concern. And I know about Sophia. Her words hit me like stones, plunging arrows of pain into an already fractured heart. "What do you want, Clara?" Johnny interrupted, his protective instincts flaring. He stepped slightly in front of me, a barrier between me and our past. "That I am not here to hurt you," she replied, her tone surprisingly gentle. "I actually came to help. I have information about the construction company, and about your family. I've been following the news." My breath caught in my throat. How could my aunt, of all people, come in with information about this fear-stirring situation? The years of distance had not been easy. I had carried the weight of her absence alongside the pain. "Why would you help me? After everything?" I challenged, my heart torn between the possibility of salvation and an instinctive mistrust of her motives. "Because despite everything, you're still family," she insisted, her eyes narrowing with intensity. "There's more at stake here than just reputations. You need to understand the truth behind the allegations. They're not just unsubstantiated claims, there's a corporate angle here, a deeper story that could expose those responsible for Sophia's tragedy. Your family may not be the only ones suffering." My thoughts swirled. Could it be true? While I waded through my own grief, was there a larger narrative at play, one that could free us from the shackles of blame? I could see conflict brewing in Johnny's eyes. He was reluctant to trust her, but Lisa seemed intrigued, ever the seeker of justice. "I don't want to hear any excuses for the past," I said, forcing myself to maintain focus. "What do you know?" Clara took a step closer, and I noticed how her hands trembled slightly. "I've been in touch with former employees at the construction company. They're scared, but they want to tell their stories. They know things safety protocols ignored, corners cut. There are powerful people involved, and they won't hesitate to bury anyone standing in their way." The urgency in her voice made the truth behind her words resonate. For a moment, I considered allowing my distrust to overshadow the possibility of carving a chance for justice. But just as it seemed like light would crack through the heavy tapestry of despair, the outside world surged once again. The screech of sirens cut through the air like a knife. Suddenly, a crash echoed from the front of our house, causing us all to take a step back. The distant voice of reporters grew louder, closing in like vultures, demanding answers and sensationalism. "Whatever you decide now, we don't have much time," Clara insisted, the urgency in her voice pulling me back. "You need to choose if you want to dig deeper and learn who really caused this, or keep your family's name untarnished without knowing the truth. Make your choice." Torn between the chaos outside and the desperate, urgent expressions of my family, I felt the weight of self-preservation warring against the need for justice. I stood at the precipice, the world swarming around me, and realized that the time had come to confront not only the past but the bitter truth that had long ago fractured my family. "What are you going to do?" Johnny asked, his voice trembling with a mix of desperation and hope. A moment of revelation settled on me, transparent and raw, like the grieving light of dawn breaking through the dark. My answer was poised on the tip of my tongue, a breath away from transforming into a decision that could change everything. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, my phone buzzed violently on the counter, shattering the tense silence. With a heavy heart, I bent to grab it, but the name lighting up the screen was the last person I ever expected to hear from, my father. As I looked up at Clara, the weight of choices and consequences bore down on me. Would I reply to a father whose decisions led to all of this, or would I choose an unknown road bigger than any of us could imagine? The glow of the phone screen illuminated not just my father's name but a world of memories laced with bitterness. Each vibration felt like a nagging voice demanding attention, pulling me back to times when family gatherings were filled with laughter instead of guilt-laden glances. I hesitated, caught between the past that shaped me and the unknown that beckoned like a siren's call. Clara's expression shifted, sensing the emotional tempest swirling within me. "You should answer it," she urged, her voice a fragile thread connecting me to the unresolved past. "You deserve to hear his side, but what does he have to say that can possibly matter now?" I shot back, heat rising in my chest. The enormity of my father's choices had cast shadows on everything good we once had. Memories of our last interaction, his dismissive tone and the finality of his words came rushing back, igniting a fire of resentment inside me. "I need to know," I said, almost to myself, contemplating the call. Is he really involved in this mess? Does he think he can just waltz back in and whatever he was or wasn't, you owe it to yourself to hear him out, Clara said calmly, though her eyes bore an urgency that tugged at my heartstrings. Pain won't be soothed by ignoring it. Lisa, standing off to the side, stepped forward. You're not alone in this. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. She reached for my arm, offering a small squeeze of encouragement, but what lingered behind that gesture was the undeniable weight of shared suffering. Sighing deeply, I finally swiped to answer, my finger trembling as the call connected. The phone pressed against my ear felt like a barrier between my heart and the reality waiting on the other end, a buffer for the words to come. Hello? My father's voice was greeted with an awkward pause heavy with the air of unspoken accusations and an ocean of unshed tears. Dad, I said, my voice wavering as I tried to find the strength within the flood of complicated emotions. What do you want? Do you even know what's happening right now? I know about Sophia, he replied, each word dropping like stones into my heart. I could hear the tremor in his voice, a vacillation of concern and shame. I'm worried about you. Worried? You're worried? You weren't there when everything started to unravel, I shot back, venom lacing my tone, but a part of me deeply wanted to hear a heartfelt apology, a glimpse of remorse for the countless nights of isolation I experienced after his decisions. Listen, he said, his voice now steady yet pleading, things are complicated. I know I made mistakes, terrible ones. But I'm trying to fix some of it. I need to talk to you about the company. What are you talking about? My pulse quickened. Do you have any idea what's at stake? Do you even care about what they've done to our family? The words rushed from me like a dam breaking, drowning out his defense. I do care. I've been trying to figure out how to support you from afar. I never wanted to hurt you. To fail you. His voice cracked slightly. For a moment, I could picture him, a mere shadow of the once dominant figure in my life. Hurt me? You've been absent. All those times I needed you. And I paused, feeling the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I don't even know who you are anymore. Just let me explain, he said after a hesitant breath. I've gathered information too. I can help you. Before he could finish, Clara reached over, her hand gently resting on my arm. He might be lying, but he might also hold pieces of the truth you need, she whispered, her voice steadying my turbulent heart. Why now? You want to help now, after everything? After you squandered so much on. I hesitated, recalling my brother's lavish wedding, the extravagant displays that seemed to mock my struggles. Because I realized how wrong I was, I let the idea of status and success overshadow what truly mattered me. Family, he said, his tone now softening, lifting a veil of vulnerability. I acknowledge my failures. I want to help you see the truth. My heart was caught in a web of doubt, and as the call dragged on, it mirrored the tension building in the room. The realization struck me hard. My father was as entrenched in this corruption as anyone, but could he be telling the truth this time? An unexpected noise broke into the stifling tension as Johnny's phone buzzed violently, breaking the moment like shattering glass. Watching his face transform from curiosity to horror, my stomach dropped. What? No, that can't be true. He gasped, staring wide-eyed at the screen. He turned to me, his lips paling. It's about Sophia. They're saying something happened. Something big. My heart raced as I looked from one face to another, the enormity of what was unfolding without hesitation crashing down on me with its threat and darkness. What do you mean? I barely managed to choke out, the room suddenly feeling colder. Johnny's shaky hand pointed to the screen. There's been another accident. This time, someone's dead. The air felt heavy, thick with unyielding tension, shadows creeping back into our lives, intertwining with the painful, unresolved questions that haunted me. My father's voice faded into a distant echo as I locked eyes with Clara, understanding zeroing in like a laser. This wasn't just about past grievances, it was a race against time, layered with lives hanging in the balance. And as the cold reality set in, my heart sank deeper, knowing the stakes had just risen infinitely higher. What were we drawing closer to? And would anyone make it out alive either physically or emotionally before it was all too late? In one moment, everything shifted. The air had thickened with urgency, the enormity of our responsibility weighing down on us like a ton of bricks. The cold realization settled in, with the ramifications of our family's secrets entwining with the fate of a child's life. As I stared at Johnny, who looked horrified by the implications of possible loss, my heart raced. It was no longer just about us, it was about innocence and the spirals of influence that could ripple outward, affecting so many others. What do you mean, someone's dead? I pressed, desperation lacing my words as I grasped at straws of hope. I needed clarity more now than ever before these revelations wrangled control of our narrative. With Johnny's tremors echoing my apprehension, we turned toward Lisa, who was already bracing herself for the onslaught of information. I don't know how, he stammered, but they said the accident earlier this week, that girl Sophia, she wasn't the only one. There's been a serious follow-up. My throat constricted painfully. Is it someone connected to us? I managed to whisper, while the room fell silent, broken only by the distant wails of sirens now blaring outside, thrumming in time with the anguish swelling inside me. I don't know, he replied, and agony washed over us all, a collective shudder that bound us in shared terror. Lisa, hovering close to us, narrowed her eyes at Johnny's phone, no longer fixated on mere headlines but something so much darker. What if it leads back to us? She suggested, the starkness of her statement reverberating in the air, a drumbeat of urgency and despair. Realizations surged within me, breaking barriers and clashing against the walls I'd built to protect myself from their truths. Our silence has given them power. We can't afford to stay ignorant anymore, I voiced, my words breaking free, forging a new path. But what about the company? Clara injected, her voice steady yet persistent. If they're skirting responsibility, revealing their name might embroil you all in more peril. Her gaze flickered between the three of us, drawing threads of concern tighter around the space between us. I locked my eyes on Clara. We have to confront it somehow. We can't be collateral damage in a game we didn't even choose. I stepped forward, conviction hardening my words as uncertainty began to dissipate. Simon suddenly appeared, the frantic energy radiating from him as he rushed into the room. They're linking your family to the collapse, he blurted out, his breath coming in bursts, a reflection of the urgency snowballing around us. The construction site, the equipment you have to prepare, the media is coming for you. Enough. I snapped, but my heart fluttered against the weight of unresolved questions. No more secrets. The guilt of believing we were acting like a perfect family when that perfect image was nothing but a facade collapses with every word. It's time to embrace the chaos. The weight of my own admission hung in the air, colliding with my father's absence. What do we do? Johnny questioned, his vulnerability on full display, a reflection of my own awakening. Just then, my phone buzzed again, and for a fleeting moment, hope flickered. I stared at the screen, feeling the heat of responsibility and determination swell within me. It might be my father again. Maybe he can help. But this time, I hesitated. Would my father simply offer more empty promises? What if this time it was different? What if, beneath his bluster, he had insight into protecting us from deeper harm? The flickering light of possibility wooed me, and with a measured breath, I answered the call. Now or never. Hello? My voice trembled with conviction. What could possibly matter more than this? Is it Sophia? What have you done this time? A heaviness lingered in his silence, broken finally by a deeply somber voice. It's about transparency, about combating the tide. I'm placing our company in jeopardy to protect you, he pressed, the tremor in his tone signaling a shift, perhaps a newfound humility. We can be honest, look back to where it all began together. My heart sank, a mix of longing and pain entwined as his words trembled through my ears. But will it be enough? I asked, my voice wavering. The lives of others hang in the balance. I know, he replied, his voice burdened with the weight of accountability. And I don't expect absolution, I just want you to be safe. Consider. But before he could finish, another explosion of sound erupted from outside, reporters clamoring for answers, breaking through our moment, shattering any tranquility we dared to hold onto. I won't let them pin this on us without a fight, I declared, my heart roaring in defiance and empowered by the weight of responsibility. We will speak our truth. As I cast my gaze across the room, I saw the flicker of resolve in Johnny, Lisa, and even Clara. We were igniting something profound amid these raging storms, a final breath of courage swelling against the tumultuous tides. Let's crowdsource the truth. Clarify the depth behind our pain and where it roots. Transparency is the way forward, I urged, my pulse steadying as my determination solidified, my heartbreak transforming into sheer resolve. Together? Johnny asked, uncertainty threading through his voice. Together, I affirmed, and as our eyes connected, we forged a pact, an unspoken agreement solidified by the gravity of our shared burdens. Let them hear us, I implored, each word burying deeper into our hearts. Well, reclaim our narrative, our family. And as we pieced together our plan, the outside noise dwindled, and an undeniable shift occurred. Each breath we took ignited hope and embers amid dark wounds, lighting the path for transformation. It would be painful, it would be messy, but it was necessary in reclaiming the fragments of our shattered lives. We would emerge from the strain of shame and cowardice toward a horizon that promised unity, a strength born chronicled in the cracks of our once splintered hearts. I realized that love could rise from ashes if we dared to acknowledge the tumultuous paths we'd taken. As the final moments blurred into the edges of resolutions, I knew then we would not only fight for lives lost, but also redefine ourselves. With every beat, we decisively stepped into the swirling realities that surrounded us, prepared to discover layers of belonging intertwined with pain, a testament to the genuine connections that lay beneath. In that crucible of growth, I understood that scars carry the essence of raw truth, the candor we'd weave into stories of resilience. My heart surged, knowing we would choose to rise from the fire together. The final line unfurled in my mind, and I breathed it softly, illuminated by hope. Well, turn our wounds into wisdom, and from the darkness, well, declare the world will know our truth.